So on this channel, I'm usually trying to do Windows tips, tricks, and little helpful hints for your average novice Windows user. And sometimes I come up with cool ideas and you guys really enjoy them, like this video I did right here, which was about how to clone a PC hard drive. But the way that I do videos is usually I figure out the problem and then I set it up for you and then show you how to do it. That gets old after a while because you can only do so many simulated issues. And then I got a comment on YouTube that gave me an idea. It says, okay, working with the average user, this has to be one of the most common requests. Can you help me upgrade to a bigger, faster hard drive? Could you do a hands-on, start-to-finish video of you actually doing this on a real client machine? And for those of you who have followed my channel for a while, you know that in addition to YouTube, I have a local computer repair business that I've had for about 15 years. Well, it just so happens I've got something that's going to take care of that. Well, let me just show you. I just picked this up yesterday and I thought, what a perfect way to address the comment and make another video. So let me tell you the story here. This is a client machine. Now, unlike other situations that I've done before where I show you how to fix non-working machines, this one works perfectly. It has a 128 gigabyte SSD drive, and the client was able to add a 2 terabyte SSD drive in addition to a spindled hard drive that he had in the system. Instead of using that 2 terabyte for storage, what he wants to do is migrate both the 128 gig drive and the spindle drive over to the 2 terabyte SSD drive and then use the 128 and the spindle drive for storage. And I thought maybe this would be a good opportunity because some of you may be going through this exact experience. A 128 gig SSD drive sounds great until you realize that Windows alone uses about 40 gigabytes of that. So right off the bat, you're losing 60% of your hard drive. So in today's video, I'm going to take a working system and I'm going to show you how to migrate from a small SSD drive to a larger one, and then all the things that you should do along the way to not only make sure that you have plenty of storage space, but you can use the old hard drives as automated backups for your new hard drive. Let's get into it. So this process is going to be really simple. I'm going to walk you through it step by step. But that leads me to the question of the day. What's the biggest problem you've ever had that you tried to fix and you just couldn't? Let me know down in the comments. Unlike my normal tutorials where I just kind of lay something out and then tell you how to fix it, this is going to be kind of different. It's going to be more like you leaning over my shoulder and just kind of watching what I do. I'm going to edit out a lot of the stuff that you don't need to see. I'm just going to focus on the stuff that's important, but it's going to be a little bit more of a raw edit than you might be used to. So I hope you like it, and let me know if you do, and let me know if you hate it. Now, as I showed you, the machine that we're going to deal with today is a desktop PC, which does make things a lot easier as far as the migration process, and it is working, so that's definitely a help. If you have a laptop, though, there are also ways that you can migrate from one drive to the other, and I'm going to touch on that as well in the video, but today we're going to focus mainly on the desktop. But if you have a laptop, make sure you stick around because I can help you there too. So for obvious reasons, I'm not going to record this live as it would end up being about a 12-hour video. So I'm going to be going through all the individual things that you need to do and try to explain them as good as possible. And if you have a question about a particular process, make sure you leave a comment in the video for me and I will address that. But I'm going to try to anticipate things you might be asking before you ask them. So in this example, because again, this is a client machine, the very first thing I want to do obviously is see what I got to work with. So the first thing I want to do obviously is just turn it on and make sure it works. But obviously in your situation, if you know your computer works, you don't need to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and log in and let's see what drive sizes we have to work with. And then I'm going to show you guys how to do this super easy. Okay, so I'm connected to the client's computer, which again, this is going to make it so much easier that everything is already working. So now what I want to do is I just want to physically see what drives are in the computer. So it looks like we've got the 128 gig SSD, which is currently running Windows. We have a 1 terabyte spindle drive, which looks like storage, which has got some data on it. And then we have the brand new 2 terabyte SSD. This is going to be the drive that the new operating system is going to be going on after we run the software. Right now, I'm not worried about the data on the spindle drive. We'll deal with that once we get everything migrated from the C drive over to the new SSD drive. Now, before we get too far, we got to take a second because I got to feed my babies. Have you found yourself stuck with a non-working or possibly pirated copy of Windows? Well, thanks to today's sponsor, KeysFan, you can be up and running again and 100% legal in about 10 minutes for less than $10. An unactivated copy of Windows prevents you from personalizing your computer. And if you want to upgrade your Windows 10 to Windows 11 now or down the road, you're going to need an authentic product key to do that. Use code AYCG50 to get 50% off Windows 10 or Windows 11 licenses. Use code AYCG62 to get 62% off Office 2019 or 2021. The purchase process could not be simpler. Simply search for the version of Windows or Office that you're looking for, add it to your cart, make sure you apply your coupon code, and within 10 minutes you'll have an email sent to you with a new product code. Go to your email and select the product key, go to Windows Activation Settings, type or paste your product key, click Next, then Activate, and you're done. Now, back to your video. So what we're going to do is use a program called Macrium Reflect. Now, I made a video before about how to clone a hard drive using Macrium Reflect, and I got a lot of comments from people telling me that it's not free. Well, if they had actually watched the video and paid attention, I said Macrium Reflect version 8.43 and older are still free and are still available to download all day long. So I'm going to emphasize that again. I'm going to get that specific version and do the migration 100% free. And if you have a similar situation like this, you can do exactly the same thing I'm doing, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, there's another way also to get a more detailed look at what is on your computer. If you open your File Explorer and right-click this PC, and then you can click on Manage, that's going to open up your computer management window here. And if you go down here to Disk Management, it will show you all the drive letters and all the partitions on your existing machine. This particular part is important to note because what you don't want to do is overwrite your working drive with an empty drive. So paying attention to partitions and drive letters is pretty important. So as you see here, this is the primary 128 gig drive letter C over here, and this has got multiple partitions here. What we want to do is we just want to duplicate those partitions over to the second drive. So we're not worried about all the specific partitions. The software will handle all that. Second drive here, it looks like the 1 terabyte spindle drive. Looks like drive letter H. And this 2 terabyte SSD drive, which is drive letter S. This will make actually the process of cloning the drive a little bit easier because all three drives are different sizes. If you have two drives, say you're going from a 1 terabyte spindle drive to a 1 terabyte SSD, you really want to pay attention to those drive letters, even brands, anything that can separate and identify which drive is which. But that will make more sense here in just a minute. Now we know what we have to work with. What we're going to do is go out and download the software and then install it. I'm going to go ahead and close these windows. I'm just going to go ahead and open up his web browser. What I'm going to do to make sure I get the absolute free version is I'm actually going to type Macrium Reflect 8.43 Major Geeks, which Major Geeks is a website that a lot of techs go to for software. I know for a fact that this version is free. So I'm going to click on this. And then I'm going to go ahead right over here and click on the 64-bit download. And we're going to get an ad pop up here. That's okay. I'm just going to ignore it. Now it will begin downloading the software. Once it's downloaded over here, I'm going to go ahead and click on it to run it. Follow the defaults all the way through this. Okay, so this is something you may actually come across. Part of the reason we need to upgrade is because there's no more space available on drive C. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say okay to this insufficient drive space message. And then what I need to do is make some room on this drive so that I can then install the software. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave the Macrium on hold for now. I'm going to go to my search bar and I'm going to type disk cleanup. And I'm going to let Windows clean up some drive space for me so that I then have room to install the software. Tell it to do some disk cleanup. It's going to get rid of temporary files and things like that. Hopefully that will free up some space for us, but it looks like it didn't. So what we need to do next, this may be a little different for you. In this case, the client has a secondary hard drive that we could just move some data to temporarily. If you don't have that secondary hard drive, and I'm not talking about the upgrade drive, it needs to be a different drive because the clone drive is going to get wiped during this process. So if you have a portable hard drive or a flash drive, you need to try to move some data off of it. In this case, I'm just going to go to this secondary drive. And again, this is all temporary, but eventually everything's going to be moved over to the other drive, so I'm not really worried about it. And I'm just going to create a folder called backups here. And again, all I'm trying to do is make enough room to install the software. Unfortunately, there's not even enough room for that. In this case, he has this spare drive, which is going to just basically sit there and not do anything. If you don't have enough room to even install the software, you're going to have to get some stuff off this drive. In this case, I'm using his secondary drive. In your case, if you don't have that, put it on a portable or a flash drive just temporarily so we can install the software. Because I know a lot of you may be upgrading because you keep running into these issues where you get drive space notifications, and this is exactly why you would want to do this. So again, I've got the backup folder created. So I'm going to go back to the C drive, back to the users folder, and I'm going to go to his downloads folder, which is where there's a ton of stuff in there. That's plenty of stuff that I can get off this drive, and then I'll be able to install the software. So I'm just going to right click on all that data. I'm going to go here back to the backups folder, and I'm just going to create another downloads folder, which yours may be pictures or music or whatever, but this was downloads, so I just want to keep everything the same. I can just go in here and right click and paste, and what that's going to do, because I cut it, which means when you cut and paste from one drive to the other, you're basically moving it off of one drive. I got the majority of the stuff off of there, and again, no big deal because this is all going to go back on the 2 terabyte drive later. But just so you understand what I didn't have enough room to install the cloning software because the primary hard drive was completely full. So what I had to do temporarily is move stuff off of it so that I could then install the software, and then again I can move it back later. So now we have about 1 gigabyte free. That should be plenty. Now when I go to install the Mac-RAM Reflect, and again the 8.43 is 100% free. If you get a notice that you need to pay for it, you click the wrong one. So go back to the directions, Google Mac-RAM Reflect 8.43 Major Geeks, and you will always get the correct version. So I'm just going to go ahead and accept all the defaults through here, and I'm just going to choose personal use, and I'm just going to say the software is being used for personal use, which in your case it is. This may be where a lot of people get confused. Just make sure you click personal and click next, and then if this box is checked, make sure you uncheck it so you don't have to register. Click next, and then just leave this checkbox here, install desktop shortcut, and we're going to go ahead and click next, and then install. And the software is going to take a few minutes and install. And now it's got plenty of room because I moved all those downloads off the primary drive. Okay, so it looks like we didn't get enough off the drive. Now we're going to have to go move more stuff. And this may very well be the type of thing that you might have to deal with. And sometimes you just have to look around and find enough space. I mean, this is sometimes what happens. So in this case, he's got a ton of documents. So I'm going to go into his documents folder. I'm going to select all the items by hitting Control A, and I'm just going to right click and cut. Same as I did before. I'm going to go to the secondary drive, which in your case may be a portable or a flash drive. I'm going to go back to that backups folder. I'm just going to right click, create a new folder. I'm going to call this folder Documents because, again, I want to keep everything exactly the way it was. I'm taking stuff out of his Documents folder and I'm moving it to that spare drive. This will guarantee I have plenty of space because this is a ton of stuff. If you come across a situation where you found a bunch of files and you're pretty sure you've got all that stuff moved, you don't necessarily have to wait for all the files to transfer. Now that I've got about 70% transferred over, it should have enough room. So I'm going to go ahead and click retry, and then it's just going to go ahead and finish the process. Now you can see that the Reflect software is installed. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and wait for all the files to transfer over before I start the cloning process. While this is happening, the one thing I just realized is that maybe you don't have a complete grasp of what cloning actually is. So I'm going to take a second and explain it. This isn't backing up your computer. I mean, it technically is, but it's not backup in the sense that you might be familiar with. What this does, the process that we're doing today, is we're taking a drive that has files and configurations and printer setups and all that stuff, network connections, all that, that's this big, and we are going to duplicate it onto a drive that's this big. When we do that, this drive will look exactly like this drive, except you get the advantage of all that extra drive space. On the source drive, you've got everything already configured, your usernames, your passwords, all your settings, printers, all that stuff. So the advantage of cloning is that you don't have to go through and do all that stuff over again. You don't have to reinstall Windows. You don't have to set up printers and all that crap and make your computer exactly the way you want. If you've already got it exactly the way you want, you just clone that tiny drive to a larger drive and everything works. You literally boot to that new drive and you're good to go. And that's what we're doing today. So just to be clear, that's the difference between cloning and backing up. So now the MacRam software is done. We're going to go ahead and start the process. Now at this point, I need you to pay extra close attention because there are some things in here that are very important. Before we get started, there's two things that are the most important things in this process. Two words: source and target. If you know what your source drive is and you know what your target drive is, the software does everything else. In this case, the source drive is the drive that we want to clone. The target drive is where we want to get everything moved over to. And again, it's going to create an exact duplicate. And we want to make sure when we do this process, you pick the right drive for your source and the correct drive for your target. This is going to give you a visual representation of your drives, just like when we did disk management in Windows. Look for the drive letters, look for the drive sizes. In this case, this is, you see here, local disk C. That's the current Windows drive, and it'll be the same for yours. Whatever drive your computer boots to, that's the C drive for that Windows. So in this case, there's local disk C, and it tells us how much space, and it's roughly 128 gigabytes. So we know for a fact that this right here is our source drive. Now we want to look through the other drives before we do anything else. We look at this drive here, this disk 2, and we can see here it's roughly 1 terabyte. We know, because we looked earlier, that the 1 terabyte is the spindled drive. We also know that there was some data written to it. One, because there was already data written to that spindle drive, but two, we also had to move a lot of stuff over to that spindle drive in order to do this. So you can look and see here that there is drive space being used, and look at the drive size. It looks right about 1 terabyte. So we are confident that this is the spindled drive. If we look at the third drive here, we can look right here at this drive and we can see that it is right at 2 terabytes. So we know that this is going to be our target drive. And you can look right here and see that the drive that is going to be our target, one of the partitions has a drive letter on it. Drive letter S in this case. So what we want to do is we want to go back to our source drive and just click once up here. And then you'll see this option right here that says clone this disk. So we're going to click on that. This next screen comes up and it says our source drive is this primary hard drive, which again is drive letter C. And you want to be extra careful and check, double check, triple check before you do this. Verify. Even I do that every time I clone a hard drive. Even though I've done this 1,000 times, I always double, triple check. Source drive is the drive that is drive letter C. The next thing is destination. Where do we want to clone that to? Click here to select a disk to clone to. Now, it's only going to give you two options because one of the three drives is the source drive. I accidentally clicked on the 1 terabyte drive, which that would be bad because that's where his data is at. This is the disk right here. In this case, this would be your brand new disk. Whatever larger disk you bought to upgrade to, that would be the one. In this case, it's for him, it's the 2 terabyte drive. So once I select that, now you can see this C drive right here is our source. This drive is the 2 terabyte target drive. Now, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and click next. The next screen that comes up asks if you want to schedule this clone. Unless this is something you're going to be doing on a regular basis, don't worry about this. Click next. This next screen comes up and it gives you a summary of what is going to happen. Make sure everything's exactly correct. I'm going to click finish. It's going to ask me again. Now, technically, this is a backup, but not in the sense that you're thinking, but just ignore that for a second. So we want to make sure that this backup now is checked. We can just uncheck save this as a backup definition file because unless you're going to be doing this on a routine basis, you don't need that. I'm going to click OK. It's going to warn you once again that this drive is going to be overwritten. Now, if you remember earlier when I told you pay attention to the drive letter, this is important because if you look right here, it just says 2 gig SSD. Well, that's actually not a 2 gigabyte drive. That's actually what they named that drive. Okay, so that one that says 2 gigabyte SSD is actually the 2 terabyte. So I'm not worried about it. It's drive letter S. And so I say, okay, this is 100% what's going to happen. There's nothing on the S drive, nothing on that 2 terabyte drive. It is perfectly fine to overwrite that. I'm going to check this box saying all target volumes will be overwritten. I'm going to check that box and click continue. Sit back and wait. This can take a few minutes. Depending on the drive, could take a little bit longer, but I'm going to pause and we'll come back when it's done. So about 13 minutes has gone by and it's cloned the drive pretty quick. Now, there's a few other things we have to do because right now, if we restarted the computer, it's still going to boot to that smaller drive. And even though there'll be an exact duplicate of that smaller drive, we have to tell Windows to start booting to the bigger one. So what we're going to do is we're going to close the software here. This is where a lot of people freak out when they look at the results of the clone. You can see this is the original C drive. We still have our 1 terabyte spindle drive here, but this is what was our 2 terabyte drive. It basically created a duplicate of the C drive onto the D drive, and it looks exactly the same, even the file size. But if we go right click on this PC and go to manage, and we go to disk management, what we're going to see is a huge empty partition on that D drive. If you look right here, you see this is the 2 terabyte drive. Look at these 4 partitions right here. These 4 partitions are exactly the same as they were on the C drive. But because we cloned it that way, it basically left that 1.7 terabytes free. So what you do here is you go to that D partition, which is the main partition here, just like this one on the C drive. You go to this main partition D, right click on it, and you click on extend volume. And you click next. And then you're going to click next again because it should automatically see that additional space there. If you click next and go ahead and click finish, now if you look at the D partition, it's 1.8 terabytes. So we'll close this. We'll go back to File Explorer, and this D drive is exactly the same. Right here, here's the file contents. It's exactly the same as what's on the C drive. But if you look here, now, look how much free space there is versus how much free space there is here. That's what we want. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this new drive and I'm going to go to properties and I'm just going to change the name of it to OS. Now you can see the current drive says local disk, and again, this is the smaller drive. The target drive is this 2 terabyte drive, which we have labeled OS. That'll be important in a minute. And then we still have our spindle drive over here. So now what we want to do is we need to restart the computer, and when we restart, we need to go into our BIOS and tell it to boot to the 2 terabyte drive instead of the old 128. So we're going to go ahead and restart. Now this is a custom built machine, so I'm not sure whether it's escape or F1 or F10 or whatever to get into the BIOS. I'm going to figure that out. I may not be able to record this, but I will definitely tell you what I'm doing while we're doing it. The reason we're doing this first, without removing any hardware, is we need to make sure that we can boot to that new 2 terabyte drive with no issues and everything works exactly the same before we consider pulling one of those other drives. Now, if you're in a situation where you don't necessarily need to pull those other drives out, as long as you can boot to the new drive, you're good to go. So in this case, looks like a delete to go into the BIOS. Now, your BIOS is going to be different. I can't possibly address every single person's BIOS, but there's going to be something in here about a boot menu or boot order. This was easy. When I hit F8 in here, you see it's got the Windows Boot Manager, which still wants to go to that 128 drive, but I can click on that 2 terabyte drive and it's going to boot to that drive. Now, what we do is we sit and wait and make sure that everything boots exactly like it's supposed to. So here is the desktop screen. We're using the same username and password that we used on the original one because it's an exact duplicate of the original one. All right, so now we are in Windows. Now, if you recall, it looks exactly the same. Of course, I did have to change the display settings because I can't see very well. We'll fix that in a second. But what we want to do first is make sure that this is actually the 2 terabyte drive that Windows is loaded onto. So I'm going to open up File Explorer. I'm going to go to this PC, and that is exactly what I wanted to see right there. If you remember, I relabeled the 2 terabyte drive as OS so that I would easily be able to recognize it. There it is right here. We are now booted to the 2 terabyte SSD drive. What's now the D drive is that 128 gig drive that still has Windows on it, and it was our original drive. But what we basically did is we made an exact duplicate of that drive onto the C drive. What I want to do now is I want to restart again, and then I want to verify that Windows is going to boot to that drive automatically without me having to do anything else. I may have to go back into the BIOS settings and force it to do that, But I want to see if it's just going to do it automatically now that I've told it to choose this drive to boot to. Okay, so I have rebooted the computer. I haven't touched anything. I'm going to enter the user's password, if I can remember what it is. Okay, so I'm back into Windows, and again, everything's running exactly the way it did when I first started this whole process. I'm going to go back to this PC, and sure enough, it's going to automatically now reboot into the 2 terabyte drive every single time. So all I did was I went in the BIOS and I just said, boot to this drive. And until I tell it otherwise, it's going to continue to do that. And the other thing I want to do here, and I'm going to run through this because you might have had to do something similar. If you remember, I took those files off the old C drive and I moved them to the spindle drive. Okay, I did that because I had to install the Macrium software and I did not have enough space. So I don't forget them. I'm going to go back to that spindle drive. I'm going to go back to the documents folder and the downloads folder, and I'm just going to take each of those and I'm going to move them back on top of where they were originally. When this is done, I have nothing backed up to that spindle drive. Everything's exactly the way it should be. Now, I should probably also go ahead and move that stuff back to that 128 gig drive, but I've already talked to the client about this specifically, and they said that once everything works on the 2 terabyte drive, they're just going to wipe the other 2 drives. So there's really no point in copying it back over, but I do want to get it back onto their new C drive, which is the 2 terabyte upgraded SSD drive. So that's what I'm doing now, just so I can keep everything on track. Okay, so while this is going on, I'm just going to minimize this because there's no reason to sit and wait on it. So what I want to do now while the files are copying is I want to come up with a backup solution for the client. I already talked to them. They do not have any backups. They said that they're going to specifically use that spindled hard drive as a backup drive. So I'm going to set up a free program that I recommend, and I have recommended for years. It's called FBackup. It's totally hands off, and it's great. So I figure if you might be interested in doing it this way, I'll walk you through it. So I'm just going to go to the FBackup webpage. I'm going to click download FBackup. I'm going to ignore the pop-ups because they're just trying to sell me stuff. I'm going to scroll down and click download FBackup free. If you're looking for a easy backup solution just from one drive to the other, this was actually a pretty good program. I've used this for many clients over the years, and it just works. So I'm going to go ahead and download this and install it, and I'll configure it for you so you can see exactly what you would need to do if you were in this exact situation. So I'm going to go ahead and open the installer file. I'm going to click install now, accept the defaults all the way through it. Click launch, and of course it's going to open the FBackup website. But now I have this icon on my desktop called FBackup. We're going to go ahead and get the first backup set up and ready to go. Okay, so we've got the FBackup software installed, and what we want to do, and again, this is super easy. You can use any backup program you want. If you use a online backup or whatever, you could certainly do that. But this is if you want a local backup and you have a drive that has room for that. So what you're going to do here, we're going to start with clicking backup, and then we're going to create a new backup. The first thing that pops up is it's going to ask, where do we want to save our backup? You want to click this drop down box. You can see here, this is our 2 terabyte drive. This is what we want to back up. This is our old 128 gig drive, which we don't want to do that. This is our spindle drive. So we want to select that. This is going to ask for what folder. So we're going to click browse, and then it's going to take you to the contents of that drive. What we want to do here is I'm just going to go down the bottom and I'm going to click make new folder, and I'm going to call it !backups. And I do the exclamation mark just so it stays at the very top of that drive. Let me show you. If you go to this PC and then you go to the H drive, the backups folder is the very first folder you want to see. That's why I put the exclamation mark in there. I want to use the exclamation mark backups, and you can call it whatever you want. That's just the way I do it. That's the very first folder. I'm going to create that folder. It will now automatically back up to that folder. We're going to click next. Then it's going to say, well, what do you want to back up? I'm going to go over here and click on the C drive. In this case, I'm going to just select the entire users folder. Now you could certainly back up just yours, but if you're on a computer that has a profile for you, maybe for your wife or your partner or the kids, the users folder contains all of that. So we're going to back up all of those profiles, including your public profile, and just click next. Now I'm going to go ahead and tell it to not back up empty folders because there's really no reason for that. Now on this next screen here, I'm just going to select the user defined box, which will back up documents, images, music files, videos, all that. If you wanted to exclude something here, you can make these changes right here. I'm going to tell it to not back up temporary files because there's really no need for that. Click next. Now in this one, this is really personal preference. You can choose to make a full backup. In this case, I'm just going to tell it to make a mirror of that users folder. Go ahead and click next. Now I want to schedule it. And you can go in and change this anytime you want, but generally the best way to do this is to schedule it when you know you're not going to be on the computer. So if you go to church, for example, you could schedule the backup Sunday at 9 a.m. and it'll run while you're at church. Or if you know you're in bed by 10 o'clock every night, schedule it for 10:30 and it'll be done by the morning. You can pick whatever day you want, whether you want it daily, weekly, monthly, however often you want to do it. In this case, I'm going to just tell it to do a weekly backup. I'm just going to go ahead and pick Sunday at 8 a.m. And again, you can change this at any time. For the backup name, I'm going to call it weekly backup. Pretty simple, right? If you want to put a description in here, maybe you have 3, 4, 5 different backups and you want to make sure you know which ones are which, you could say, well, this is a backup of my game files, or this is a backup of my downloads folder, or this is a backup of whatever, okay? So you can even put a little icon if you want. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and click save, and then I'm just going to click save and not run it for now. So now you can see here, it shows you a list of all the backups. This is good that it popped up here. It's a free program. It's going to try to get you to buy it. I would absolutely buy this program, but the free version works pretty good too, so why not? At this point, it shows you exactly what you just created. You can right click on this and go to the properties, and it will show you all the different settings. You can, if you want to maybe change destination, whatever, all the settings, compression, anything you want to change, you can just right click on the job. You can make those changes, or you can delete it and start over, whatever you want to do. So at this point, I've got the backup. I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to go ahead and run the backup, and now it's going to start. So first thing it's going to do is it's going to create a file list, and then it's going to create a duplicate of the users folder that's on our new C drive, which is the 2 terabyte upgraded drive. And this usually takes a few minutes, so I'm just going to pause and come right back. So now the F backup is completed, I want to make sure that it's actually done and did what it says it's going to do. So I'm going to open up File Explorer. I'm just going to go to that 1 terabyte drive, which is, again, the spindle drive that we're going to use as the backup drive. Again, the very first folder is where we backed up to, and I'm going to double click the C drive, and just as we said, we were going to back up the entire users folder, and there is everything that was on the computer in that particular users folder. So at this point, we're done, but there's a little bit more that I need to tell you about. Okay, so all of these settings work great if you have a desktop that you can easily get in and move drives around and all that. But what if you have a laptop? Well, that does make it a little bit more complicated, but not impossible. Now, depending on what you plan on doing as far as the upgrade, kind of determines what the next step is. So if you have a laptop, and like in this example, you want to upgrade from a smaller drive to a larger drive, or from a spindle drive to an SSD or even an NVMe drive, if your laptop supports that, then what you should probably do is get something like this. This is one of the things that I have recommended on my channel for a while. I think I bought it maybe 6 months ago. I used to use one of these, which is basically a 4-bay drive storage, and it worked great to be able to copy drives and duplicate drives and things like that. But this thing is fantastic. You can connect it to your laptop via a USB cable, and you can connect either a SATA drive, in this case your upgraded target drive right here, or if your laptop has NVMe SSD capability, you have a connection right here that you can use for that. And you can either do it directly from your laptop while your laptop is running, just like we did in the desktop video. So say, for example, if you wanted to go from an SSD to an NVMe drive, you could actually take that hard drive out, put it in here, put the NVMe drive in here, and then you have offline cloning capability. You could hit a button, 15 minutes later, you take this NVMe drive out, plug it into your laptop, and just like with the desktop, boom, you're good to go. So this is a really cool thing. It's one of my favorite toys, and if you want to check it out, I'll put a link in the description for you, but I highly recommend this. So if you have a laptop or an all-in-one that you can't just very easily get in there and add another drive to duplicate, this would be a great solution. And as an added bonus, you could take your old drive out of that laptop and put it in here, plug it into your laptop or your all-in-one, and now you have a storage drive that stays plugged into your computer. So this is really useful. Again, I'll put a link in the description. You can check it out. So let's address some of the questions that you might have. First of all, since I was just mentioning the Sabrent drive cloner, if you have a laptop, your first question might be, well, once I get the drive clone, then how do I swap the drives? Well, unfortunately, there's so many different laptops. I can't go through every single possible scenario for you. But what I can tell you is do the same thing that most people do, is get on YouTube, type in the make and model of your laptop, followed by the word disassembly. And most of the time, you're going to find somebody who can show you step by step how to take your laptop apart. Now, that sounds a little scary, but you have to remember, most of the time when you are swapping a hard drive or memory in a laptop, it's going to be relatively accessible. You will be able to just basically take the back cover off most times, and with just anywhere from 4 to 9 screws usually. And then once you take that back cover off, your hard drive is going to be sitting right there in plain sight. Once you clone that drive, take the old laptop drive out, plug your new one in, tighten it back down, put the back cover on, turn it on. So that's absolutely something you can do yourself. Or at worst, if you want to clone the drive yourself using that Sabrent drive cloner or some other method, and then maybe just pay somebody who maybe is a little more tech savvy who can just very easily swap those drives out for you. That's all they have to do. They don't have to set it up. They just literally have to take one drive out, put the other one in, and you turn it on and you're good to go. So that's one solution for you if you have a laptop or an all-in-one. The second thing I want to address, and I guarantee you, even though I've addressed this already in the video, is the Macrium. If you follow those steps in the video I gave you, click by click, box by box, you do not have to pay for it. You do not have to sign up for it. You don't get a trial. Do exactly the way I showed you, and you will have the same exact results. It's a free program. Macrium has even come out and said they have no problem with people using version 8.43 and older with no issues. So make sure you get that exact version as I showed you in the video. Now, this project has been super fun, and as you can see, it's really not that hard. But even though we got the backup set up for the client, there's a couple more things that we need to do. Even though this is a duplicate of that smaller drive, I'm going to label each of these drives. And you can either hit F2 on your keyboard or just right click and go to properties and name it something easily identifiable. In this case, I'm going to call it 128 gig SSD. Because what I want is when the client gets that drive back to know exactly what they're dealing with. So now I've got the new 2 terabyte drive installed. I'm going to change the name on this to 2 terabyte SSD. So now when the client looks at this, he's going to see at a glance, without having to know anything about anything, that this is the 2 terabyte drive, this is the old 128 gig, and this is the 1 terabyte hard drive. Now, one thing that the client did say is that he wanted all of this stuff off of the old spindle drive onto the SSD. So the one thing that I need to do here, and this may be in your situation, you may have this where you have a bunch of stuff on your old drive, so we need to make sure that we get it copied over, because I don't want him to wipe this drive and then realize he didn't have everything backed up. So I'm going to go to the C drive, and again, I'm just going to create a new folder. And just like I did before, I'm just going to call this backups. I'm going to create a new folder in here called 1 terabyte hard drive. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to that 1 terabyte hard drive. At this point, I just simply want to copy everything over. I'm going to uncheck the backups folder. That doesn't necessarily need to be on the C drive. But what I am going to do is I'm going to select everything else that's on this drive, which again, they wanted a copy of. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose copy. Or you can just click the entire selection and drag it over here on top of the 1 terabyte folder that I created. And it's probably going to take a while. But once it starts copying, now he'll be able to freely wipe that spindle drive and use it for anything else he wants. The downside is he might have to change location on the backup drive, but that's something we'll deal with later. So now it's started copying, and now we just have to basically wait for it to copy almost 600 gigabytes of data, which in Microsoft time says 1 hour and 30 minutes, but I'm not holding my breath. So I'm going to pause this and we'll come right back when it's done. Okay, so all the files have been copied from the spindle drive to the 2 terabyte drive. What I want to do now is just verify that everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to go to the Windows File Explorer. So when you open it here, you can see everything is still on the original spindle drive. We still have the original 128, which is what we started with, exactly as it was, and we could actually turn around and still boot to this drive. And then on the new 2 terabyte drive, we have all the original files, plus under backups, everything copied from that spindle drive, which was about the 600 gigabytes. At this point, we are ready to go. We have fully upgraded to the 2 terabyte drive. If you wanted to be 100% sure that everything works exactly like it's supposed to, you could theoretically just disconnect these 2 drives from the computer. You would only have that one 2 terabyte drive, but that would guarantee that it's going to work. I've rebooted the computer a dozen times, connected, disconnected, it works fine. Once you have got the correct target drive successfully booting, you don't have to do anything else. Now these 2 drives are essentially storage. Now, the client asked me to not wipe the drives and to leave them on there. I would recommend that simply because I don't want to be the one deleting their data. I'll let them do that. If they choose to do that, that's on them. But what they wanted me to do was to get them upgraded to a 2 terabyte drive exactly as they originally had it. Pretty simple, huh? So I sincerely hope that you actually enjoyed that video and got a lot out of it. I tried to make it as simple as possible, but I also wanted to show you that even you, with maybe limited or no tech skills, can actually do your very own upgrade with some free tools and a little bit of time and patience. So let me know down in the comments what you thought about this video and whether it helped you or not. I'd love to hear back from you. If you were able to upgrade your computer by yourself with the help of this video, let me know down in the comments and I'll send you a big thumbs up. So if you have any questions about anything in this video, let me know down in the comments and I'll do my best to point you in the right direction. And lastly, what did you think? Did you enjoy this kind of video? Would you like to see more of these client fixes? Also, let me know in the comments and we'll do some more. Thanks so much for watching.